Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Canal Algérie's nightly news. On to the headlines. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Minister of National Defense, chairs the Higher Council of Security. The President of the Republic extends condolences following the death of late Mustafa Boudina, President of the National Association of Former Death Row Prisoners. Algeria earns top global ranking as best policy driver for entrepreneurship at Global Entrepreneurship Summit in the U.S. Dar al-Hikmah to release a revised edition of Rachid Boujadoura's acclaimed novel Les Contrebandiers de l'Histoire, a defiant literary counterattack against colonial France's propagandists. Welcome back. We begin with tonight's top story as the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Minister of National Defense, chaired on Wednesday a meeting of the Higher Council of Security. Following the sad news of the death of the late Mujahid Mustafa Boudina, President of the National Association of Former Death Row Convicts, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, sent a condolences message to the family of the deceased, which reads, "To the family of the late Mujahid Mustafa Boudina, it is by the will of Almighty God that the late Mujahid Mustafa Boudina has passed away, President of the National Association of Former Death Row Convicts, survivor of the guillotine. He was in charge of the resistance group and endured the bitterness of waiting on death row in the Montluc prison in Lyon. The deceased leaves behind the memory of a brave mujahid, a witness to the horrors of colonialism, who was surrounded by honor and respect. May God have mercy on him. He, along with his fellow martyrs and valiant fighters, remain a symbol of resistance that psychologically impacted the colonial power, thanks to their unwavering commitment to their position, even in the face of imminent execution, a legacy passed on to the generations of Algerians to this day. In these painful moments, I extend to you and his fellow mujahideen my sincerest condolences and heartfelt sympathy, praying that Allah Almighty grant him forgiveness and inspire you with patience and solace," ends the message. In other news, the President of the Republic of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, had left Algeria. After the end of his visit to our country, he was seen up at the airport, at the Hawari Boumediene International Airport, by the Premier Nadir Al-Arabawi, as well as the Minister of State of Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Ahmed Attaf, in addition to the Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research, Kamal Bidari, and the Minister of Post and Telecommunication, Ali Zarouki. The official visit of the Rwandan president to Algeria was marked by several accords to further boost cooperation between the two brotherly countries in various fields. As qualified by the President of the Republic, the visit of the Rwandan president is a precious opportunity. Details with Menan Maafa.
Successful economic models converge to take a major step toward multidimensional African strategic partnerships. Algeria and Rwanda, two emerging economies, attract and learn from each other's experiences. The political will of both leaders has paved the way for a new phase of cooperation between Algeria and Kigali. A summit between President Abdelmajid Tebboune and the Rwandan President Paul Kagame, rich in political symbolism and geopolitical weight, was followed by an expanded working session that opened all avenues of cooperation. The visit led to key agreements in vital sectors such as telecommunications, entrepreneurship and innovation, digital economy, investment promotion, pharmaceuticals, vocational training, communication, agriculture, livestock, higher education, air transport, judicial and police cooperation, and a visa exemption for diplomatic passport holders.
أود هنا أن أثمن اتفاقيات ومذكرات التفاهم التي تم توقيعها وتكريسها في مشاريع ملموسة.
strategic partnerships that go beyond bilateral relations to promote security, stability, and sustainable development across the continent, as confirmed by the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune.
عربنا عن دعمنا لتفعيل المنطقة الإفريقية للتبادل الحر، وأغتنم هذه السانحة للتنويه بدور رواندا وتفعيل الوكالات الإفريقية للأدوية.
At the level of international forums and the global stage, there is a strong consensus and ongoing coordination between the two countries. The President of the Republic reaffirmed on the occasion Algeria's unwavering support for the Sahrawi cause, in addition to an immediate ceasefire in Gaza.
دعمنا للشعب الصحراوي وحقه في تقرير المصير عبر الاستفتاء حر ونزيه وعادل. عبرنا في هذه المناسبة عن انشغالنا العميق بالأوضاع في غزة وضرورة الوقف الفوري للعدوان على الشعب الفلسطيني.
We also value the close cooperation between our countries in multilateral forums where we support each other on regional and global issues.
On the path of economic takeoff, Algeria and Rwanda meet at the crossroads of knowledge. The Rwandan president visited the Higher School of Artificial Intelligence, home to Rwandan students, praising its high-level training and inclusive environment. From a rich nation in history and turning decisively toward Africa, to another that rebuilt strong economic foundations after tragedy. A shared African vision emerged, driven by two key players from North to Central Africa, shaping a new, forward-looking model of South-South cooperation.
In other news, the Prime Minister Nadir al-Arbawi chaired a government meeting devoted to listening to a presentation on the progress of projects within the framework of the strategic vision of the President of the Republic for the development of the Bay of Algiers. The government also listened to a presentation on the implementation of the roadmap for the modernization of payment methods and the proposed new measures. In the same setting, it listened to a progress report on the advancement made in reducing ship stays and the transit of goods through ports. Furthermore, the government listened to a presentation on the progress of the expansion and development project of the Jinjin port in Jijil province, which will transform it into a major hub for the exchange of goods in the Mediterranean basin. And as part of the follow-up on the implementation of the National Seawater Desalination Program, the government listened to a presentation on the progress of the work to connect the 5 new seawater desalination plants, which aim to enhance the supply of potable water to residents of coastal and neighboring provinces. In accordance with the instructions of the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, Algeria has decided to send a team of executives, experts and technicians from the Sonal Gas Group to Syria to assess the situation. The Minister of State of Energy, Mines and Renewable Energies, Mohamed Al-Qab, spoke by phone with his Syrian counterpart, Mohamed Al-Bashir. The discussions focused on proposing a detailed action plan to support electricity production, transmission and distribution capacities, as well as the maintenance of essential electrical networks and equipment in Syria. Discussions also focused on ways to strengthen and develop bilateral cooperation in the energy sector. Mohamed Al-Qab expressed Algeria's willingness to host Syrian group training program in the fields of electricity and gas. The two ministers expressed their shared desire to strengthen and expand bilateral cooperation to include other areas of common interest, particularly hydrocarbons, mining, and renewable energies. These talks are part of the follow-up of the results of the visit to Syria last February by the Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Ahmed Attaf, and the Special Envoy of the President of the Republic. In other developments, Algerian Judge Shafiqa bin Saoula was elected as Vice President of the African Court on Human and People's Rights. The elections took place on the first day of the court's 77th ordinary session, which has taken place at its headquarters in Tanzania. The new office has a 2-year term until 2027, according to the court's rules of procedure. As a reminder, Judge Shafiqa bin Saula was elected to the African Court on Human and People's Rights in January 2017 during the 28th session of the African Summit for a term of 6 years and was re-elected in February 2023 for a second term. In Slovenia, the Minister of Health, Abdelhak Seyhi, the Minister of Labour, Employment and Social Security, Faisal bin Talib, held talks with the advisor to the Slovenian PM for Cooperation, Development and Humanitarian Aid and President of the Danilo Turk Charitable Foundation. The enriching meeting allowed for an in-depth exchange of views on ways to strengthen cooperation in health, social development and humanitarian action, while emphasizing the fundamental role of civil society in supporting public policies with a human dimension. Both sides noted convergence in views in regards to the principles of peace, solidarity and international justice, notably through joint commitment in favor of the Palestinian cause. In economy, Algeria closed 2024 with strong non-hydrocarbon growth and sharp decline in inflation, driven by resilient agriculture and steady investment. The World Bank now calls for structural reforms to turn the momentum into lasting, diversified progress. Midi Salila Balaman.
Algeria closed out 2024 with a strong economic performance. Growth outside of the oil and gas sector reached 4.8%, a sign of growing momentum in domestic demand and sustained investment across key industries. Inflation also saw a major drop from over 9% in 2023 to a much more manageable 4% this year. Behind that progress, a surprisingly solid performance from the agricultural sector. Despite limited rainfall, strong harvests helped stabilize food prices and eased pressure on household budgets. Meanwhile, investment stayed robust, pushing national production up by nearly 5%. Grain crops did particularly well, spurring activity in manufacturing and services and supporting broader economic dynamism. Looking ahead, 2025, there's a potential boost in hydrocarbon revenues thanks to higher OPEC Plus quotas. However, the World Bank warns that the short-term gains aren't enough. In its latest report, the institution urges Algeria to focus on long-term resilience by improving productivity, modernizing industry and services, and gradually shifting jobs towards sectors like agriculture and construction. Paired with targeted reforms, fiscal rebalancing, and investment in skills, this strategy could unlock the country's full economic potential and lay the groundwork for a more diverse, future-ready economy.
To other good news, where Algeria won the Policy Champion Award at the Global Entrepreneurship Congress, recognizing its bold reforms to boost startups, innovation, and investment. The award reflects the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboun's push for a knowledge-based economy and entrepreneurship youth. Mia Salila Balaman again.
From Algeria.
Algeria has emerged as a global leader in entrepreneurial policy, claiming the coveted Policy Champion Award among over 50 nations. This recognition celebrates the country's efforts to cultivate a dynamic business climate that sparks innovation and encourages young people to launch ventures and create economic value.
This is the first time, thanks to Jan Algeria, that we have had the opportunity to explore advanced entrepreneurial ecosystems and draw inspiration from them. Our main goal with this initial participation was to understand how global environments operate and what policies they implement to boost local ecosystems, knowledge that we can apply to strengthen Algeria's own landscape.
This international accolade also highlighted Algeria's rising influence on the continent, following its prominent role in the African Startup Conference. The event became a springboard for cross-border collaboration and positioned Algeria as a forward-moving force in the transition to a knowledge-based economy. With a new generation leading the charge, the country is no longer simply adopting innovation, it is becoming a source of it.
Algeria remains a target of the French far-right, which uses some journalists and YouTubers to spread hate. A strategy exposed by Muqran Hafsi in Algérie Patriotique. Manal Maafa explains.
An article on Algérie Patriotique denounces what it calls a hateful, coordinated campaign against Algeria. The author describes its investigators, Algerian journalists and YouTubers abroad as pen-for-hire lackeys, serving foreign agendas, particularly the French far-right, nostalgic for colonial rule. These figures are accused of spreading toxic rhetoric, collaborating with pro-Zionist groups, and promoting disinformation. The article alleges they justified the killing of children in Gaza under the guise of self-defense and supported Zionist-aligned terrorist organizations. Some are also accused of xenophobia and of aligning with French far-right leaders like Bruno Retailleau and former ambassador Xavier Driancourt. The article concludes that these attacks, whether from Paris, Gaza or elsewhere, all serve one goal, which is advancing the interests of the Zionist entity by targeting Algeria and its principled support for just causes, especially the Palestinian cause.
In New York, the UN Security Council failed once again to adopt a resolution for an immediate, unconditional and permanent ceasefire in Gaza after the US vetoed. Here's what Algeria's permanent representative to the UN had to say.
Today, the elected members of the Council have stood with clarity, with conviction, with courage. They are the proud bearer of moral legitimacy. They are the true compass of the world's conscience. The draft resolution that was halted today was not the voice of a few, but the collective will of the entire world, north and south, east and west. 14 out of 15 Security Council members. It was a message to the people of Palestine. You are not alone. You are not alone. And it was a message to the Israeli occupier. The world watched you. The shield of impunity, of immunity, must fall.
On to the new book by the universal writer Rachid Boujedra, The Smugglers of History, Les Contrebandiers de l'Histoire, published by the publishing and translation house Dar al-Hikmah. The work is intended as a response to the words of Boualem Sansal and Kamal Daoud. This time, the author has chosen a direct confrontation with the new colonial literature, which monopolizes history, disdains culture, and ignores geography. The book, published by Dar al-Hikmah Publishing House, owned by Ahmed Madi, president of the National Publishers Union, is considered the first reaction of the intellectual class to the deceptive campaign led by Boualem Sansal and Kamal Daoud. And behind them, the French neo-colonial elite who fantasize about colonial crimes, supported and backed by the French far right. The book, which the writer Rachid Boujedra chose to write in Arabic and French, is intended as a literary, intellectual, and cultural argument against the roots of colonial literature, which today dreams of reviving the stages of contempt for peoples, subjugating their will and confiscating their identity. The book aims to be a firm and revealing responsive to what the colonialist elite are attempting to do, using figures like Boualem Sansal and Kamal Daoud. The author stands up to contradict their claims, calling for dialogue and discussion, and exposes this neo-colonialism literature by revealing the background of the concept of neo-colonialism, which today is adorned with tired Western slogans such as freedom of expression and thought. On to the operational report of the People's National Army's activity in the past week. In the context of the fight against terrorism, thanks to the efforts of units of the PNA, the terrorist named Rikan Brahim, also known as Bilal, and the terrorist Lahid Brahim, also known as Musa, surrounded to the military authorities of Burj Baji Mukhtar in the 6th military region. Possession of 2 Kalashnikov submachine guns, an automatic pistol, and a quantity of ammunition and other items. While other detachments of the PNA arrested 6 support elements to terrorist groups in different operations across the national territory. The framework for the fight against organized crime, the continuation of the tireless efforts aimed at countering the scourge of drug trafficking in our country, combined detachments of the PNA intercepted in coordination with the different security services in operations across the military regions 63 drug traffickers and averted attempts to introduce 31 kilograms of processed key through the borders with Morocco, while 2,059,240 psychotropic tablets were seized during separate operations across the military regions. In Tamras, Port-Waji Mukhtar, Ingizam and Janet, detachments of the People's National Army arrested 220 individuals and seized 50 vehicles, 11 generators, 183 jackhammers, 5 metal detectors, as well as quantities of mixture of raw gold and stones, explosives, detonation tools, and the other equipment used in illegal gold mining operations. On the other hand, 13 other individuals were arrested, 11 hunting rifles, 11,350 liters of fuel, as well as 18 quintals of tobacco and 39 tons of foodstuffs intended for smuggling and speculation were seized during separate operations across the national territory. Similarly, border guards thwarted at the level of our national coasts attempts at illegal immigration and proceeded to save 381 illegal immigrants of different nationalities who were arrested across the national territory. And communique. As part of the humanitarian missions and efforts of the Coast Guard units of the Naval Forces Command related to the rescue of human lives at sea, and following the receipt by the National Center for Surveillance and Rescue Operations at Sea of the National Coast Guard Service of the Naval Forces Command, Tuesday, June 3, 2025, at 10:47 p.m., of a request of an emergency medical evacuation concerning a Turkish sailor, a member of the crew of the Maltese-flagged oil tanker traveling from Libya to Belgium, 28 nautical miles north of Al-Awana, Jijil. Immediately, in coordination with the Regional Center for Surveillance and Rescue Operations at Sea, Jijil's 5th Military Region, a medical evacuation at sea was initiated through the deployment of the AS-16 Search and Rescue helicopter from the 560th Search and Rescue Helicopter Squadron. The injured Turkish sailor was immediately evacuated to Tahir Jijil Airport and transferred by civil protection officers to the Jijil Hospital for necessary treatment. This operation is part of the humanitarian missions of the Coast Guard units of the Naval Forces Command, reflecting the efforts made and their constant commitment to intervene to save lives at sea, regardless of the circumstances. Let's talk sports now. The national football team arrived in Constantine on Wednesday ahead of the friendly game against Rwanda. The Desert Warriors had one final training session at Shahid Hamlawi Stadium, where they will play this Tuesday starting 5 p.m. With that, we end tonight's bulletin. Thank you for joining us. Good night.